Legality and Ethics of Workplace Privacy by Oscar Cecilia. As technology progresses, it has seeped more and more into our lives. Nowadays, it would be unthinkable to have a job without some type of connection to the internet. Even manual labor jobs will expect their employees to have a connection at home and to be able to send and receive emails. Outside of the workplace, technology in the form of social media has gained an unprecedented amount of popularity. For one to not have a social media would likely lead to them feeling out of place socially in our world. Social media also offers an unbeatable connection to the rest of the world. Without social media, one would be missing out on the millions of perspectives of people from around the world who they otherwise would not be able to interact with. On the smaller scale, people without social media can also miss out on important parts of the lives of those who are close to them. This is especially impactful for people with disabilities and conditions that keep them at home. As companies have integrated networks into their workplace, it has become very easy for them to monitor exactly what their employees are doing down to the minute. Employers who monitor web use argue that since they are paying for their employees' time and work, they are allowed to be able to monitor to see what they are doing during that time. They also argue that when employees enter an office and use a company's network, they would expect less privacy than they do when they are using one at home. Employees argue that they have the right to privacy. The right to privacy does not change during work hours, and as almost every company requires you to use their network, the lack of choice forces you to give up your right of privacy. This invasion of privacy also opens the door for an employer to learn more about the personal life than that employee would want to give up. Additionally, the act of being monitored constantly adds more stress and makes the work life of an employee harder. Opponents of web monitoring are also adamant that an employee's performance should be the number one thing they should be based off, not how they spend their time. Corporations argue that since they have brands and consumers that they need to appease, it is important for consumers to have trust and faith in the employees of that company. It is also very important to employers to have a stable work environment. Many managers and supervisors worry that one employee's actions on social media could cause a divide between coworkers. Many employers feel, since all the information that is on social media is public, that they have the right to view it and make decisions on employment based off of that. Employees feel as if they have the right to privacy. Lately, there have been more and more employers utilizing bots that would read through web pages and social media to try and see and find any inflammatory statements. Many employees feel that addition of these bots has made almost each and every word they read into a public record of who and what they are. Many employees also feel that when an employer is looking at their social media, they're seeing a naked look into their personal lives and their lifestyles. Without social media, this information would never be available to an employer, and an employee would be allowed to keep that private. This is especially worrisome to people who they feel as their lifestyle is discriminated against, especially people who are gay or feel like they have political views that might differ or even oppose their employer. The legality of social media monitoring is pretty iffy in America. While most states do offer protections for employees on what they do on their time off the clock, these do not extend to social media and most uses of technology. Those who support drug testing in the workplace argue that a drug abuser in the workplace is a major issue. Those who abuse drugs are more likely to fall behind in terms of productivity, to be nuisances to their coworkers, and have a much less likely chance of improving where they are. In many jobs that require driving or use of heavy equipment, there is a very real danger that could happen. It could even cause death to a coworker. Employers believe that in jobs where an employee would need to drive or use heavy equipment, there is an even greater risk where harm or death could happen to them or a coworker or a random civilian. Another common argument is employers will state how employees must all agree to be drug tested. If they don't want to be drug tested and they feel it is a violation of their right of privacy, they are more than welcome to not take the job and go look elsewhere. When a large corporation has thousands and thousands of employees, there will inevitably be some drug abusers in their ranks. For an employer to find any other way of drug testing would be very difficult. An employer just looking at productivity and their work numbers will not be enough for an employer to find drug abuse. Even having a professional or a supervisor or manager carefully looking over each and every employee will not be able to find any results as well as a drug test. And in addition, it will almost certainly be much more expensive than a $50 drug test. In the EU, there has been more recent laws that have been made to accommodate the newest technology. And in the EU, for an employer to use any data, whether it is private or public, of any person, including their employees, they must ask permission. So in the EU, employees do have the heads up that their social media is being monitored. Those who are against drug testing will argue that drug tests allow employers to see into their personal lives and to penalize them within the workplace for the decisions they made at home. If a worker is able to come to work and do their job and be respectful to their coworkers and to maintain the productivity of a workplace, then what they do in the privacy of their own home should not affect their job. Additionally, a drug test cannot discern between a drug user and a drug abuser. Millions and millions of Americans are able to responsibly use drugs or alcohol and still come to work and do their job well every single day. Accessing the legality of drug tests in America is tough because each state has its own employment laws. Although one thing that is consistent is that every single state and DC is considered an at-will employment. At-will employment means that an employer can fire an employee for any reason, or they can simply not leave a reason to. The only exceptions would be if it was found out that an employee was fired for race, gender, or sexual orientation. The EU itself does not have any broad, widespreading laws and regulations regarding employer drug testing. While, for the most part, countries do support employer drug testing and don't put much regulations around them, there are some that will put some regulations on it. For example, in France, you may not drug test an employee until their contract starts. And additionally, drug tests can only be used in jobs where it is deemed that drug use and drug abusers are an extreme risk, such as those who drive or use heavy equipment.